Before we begin, thank you very much to the Titanium Ranger for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for the help. Every little bit does help keep the channel coming and the daily content going, and I do appreciate everyone who pitches in, even if it's just that little bit. It all helps, and I appreciate all of it. Thank you for letting me continue to do this for you. So, we're up to 2018 in our year-long look at the best toys of every year in Transformers. It's been a heck of a 40th celebration so far. We are nearing the end. And we're into an interesting year here because this is the end of Power of the Primes, the beginning of Siege, which I think really is like where the current generation and mindset of Transformers has begun. This is the first year, like, Siege kind of started what we are experiencing now in the Generations line, and it seems like it's going to continue to do so. Meanwhile, Studio Series now becomes a thing, so we have two concurrent toy lines to keep track of now, and both of them are still ongoing to this day. On top of the occasional odd piece here and there, the occasional masterpiece toy, etc., we got a lot to cover. And I'm going to admit there's going to be some biased choices on this, but it's my list. That's how it's going to work. So, trying to be as unbiased as possible, here are the 10 best Transformers of the year 2018. And we're going to start off with a shelf warmer. And I don't like that this toy shelf warmed because I thought it was actually extremely well put together and well done. Let me look for a second and put up a little bit of a defense for Dropkick. Now here's the thing. It shelf warms because it's horribly inaccurate, right? It doesn't have any of the car parts in the robot mode, doesn't even come close to any kind of triple changing mentality behind it whatsoever. It's basically just a robot posing as Dropkick because it kind of has one of his vehicles. I'm going to put all of that aside, and I'm going to point out the fact that this is a really well engineered toy. The helicopter mode on this toy is incredibly slender, like to the point where I wouldn't have imagined you'd get a full three-dimensional transforming robot out of it, and yet one exists, and frankly, not a bad one either. I don't mind the look of the toy. I think the articulation on it is, robust enough to make me happy with him. He's detailed well, he's got just enough paint to be interesting. I happen to like this toy. And I really do think it's kind of a shame that it just has such a bad reputation because of its inaccuracies. I think engineering-wise, it's extremely impressive. Just to watch that robot squish down into what is essentially a stick of a helicopter, I think is really impressive. I think that's an incredibly good engineering job, and I think it's worth noting in this list. Yeah, I'm going to keep it to number 10. I'm not going to say like it's one of the absolute best, but I do think just for accomplishing something that I didn't think was possible on a deluxe scale, I'm going to give him at least this much of a nod. You will notice that I have front-ended this video with a lot of Studio Series figures because while they are good in their first year, I think there's only a few that really show what the line was capable of, but fortunately, we do have some really good standouts. Bone Crusher, for instance. You know by now I'm very biased again, on the Bone Crusher design. I love how this character looks. I do think it's extremely unique, both in the Minesweeper vehicle mode, but also just in that it's just a really buff, burly robot that has a lot of really cool design aspects to it. I don't know why, of all the movie Transformers, and you know me, I'm not big on movie Transformers, it just works for me. It's just one of those toys I just keep looking back at and go like, yeah, I actually really did enjoy this. Like, this really is a cool looking design that I really like. And the toy measures up. It's bulky in all the right ways. It's got a lot of great articulation to it. Even manages to make that like claw foot design still work. Yeah, and then it does everything I wanted it to in the vehicle mode as well with that big sweeper claw. Like, it's... If you don't want to pay for the masterpiece, it's as good of a Bone Crusher as you could ever hope for. And I'm very thrilled that he was he was given such a nice treatment. Easily one of my favorites in the line. That said, I will acknowledge one that I do think was, on a technical level, just a little bit better because it had more work to do and still managed to pull it off and come up with a toy I still really liked. So now we can talk about Ironhide. I remember this toy being so scarce. Like, this was like one of the first Studio Series toys where like you couldn't get a hold of it because everybody wanted it, and for really good reason. Like, this accomplishes a lot. The only thing that keeps it from being completely screen accurate is that bumper in the front that doesn't wrap around like it's supposed to. But everything else is done exceptionally well. It's got the tough aesthetic. It's got the buried shoulders underneath the truck front. Like, all the panels fold up around the legs really well to kind of conceal them. It's doing so much. It's doing so much. And then spot on accuracy in the head sculpt with its asymmetry. It just looks great. It plays great. And yeah, the truck mode as well looks really, really good. Yeah, I can understand why this one was such a hot commodity and why it was one of the first Studio Series figures to get a second run, because there's so much demand for it. For good reason. For good reason. It's very accurate. It is very well articulated. It is a really good looking figure. And really, like, when you have to accomplish what this toy does with its torso and you still manage to pull off everything really, really well, that's commendable. That earns you a spot on the list. So yeah, surprise, surprise. TJOmega, who doesn't like movie designs, has already started this list with 3 of them. And now we get to a toy that I frequently admit is a very stupid toy that I do take issue with, but I will put it on the list because I do think it still does a lot. And to be fair, yes, you do get a lot of play value out of it, but I don't think it's quite worth the price. So number 7 is going to be Power of the Prime's Optimal Optimus. It loses points because it's missing a mode from the original toy, and really I don't think it was a mode that was impossible to engineer in because, well, frankly, let's be honest, this toy is incredibly simplistic. But that said, you are getting a lot out of the toy. His beast mode is there. You can also, like, he has robot and the flight motor there. The individual Optimus Primal supposedly being like, oh, this is his Cybertronian form, where really it's just a block with a cockpit on the front. And that is just to basically make sure it can work as a part of the jet mode, a part of the robot mode. It's a bit utilitarian, and honestly, like, I don't believe Hasbro when they say, oh, this is how he looked on Cybertron. Doesn't really feel right. Just kind of feels like you're doing it for this. But that said, look how much it does. Look at how much it does. This is a really fully packaged figure, even if it is missing things. There is a lot to do with it play value wise, even if it doesn't hit the right notes. I will admit I liked the black repaint they did of it for the Throne of the Primes better than I did this version. So I'm playing off of that. I'm playing off the fact that, yes, if I take myself away from the original optimal situation just a little bit, I can actually appreciate this toy as being really fun and having a lot to do. I just don't think it was handled particularly well as like a brand new take on Optimal Optimus. At the very least, it shows they can do a Transmetal without chrome. Can we get more of that, please? It's a fine figure. I know a lot of people who love this figure. I don't absolutely love it, but I will acknowledge it does do a lot. It is a good toy. I have to put it on the list. If I'm being objective, it makes the list. I have to put this toy on the list because it's going to lead to a lot of toys later on, but all of those are technically retools and remolds, and I don't include those on the list. First run molds only. That's going to get trickier here on because they start reusing a lot of parts. What a retool constitutes starts getting blurry. But while he is here, and while it is fair game, let's talk about Siege Optimus Prime. I know a lot of us are tired of a lot of the Siege molds. It's why some of them did not make the list, even though they are good toys. But let's acknowledge what deserves to be acknowledged. This is a really nice take on Optimus Prime. And I think for a few reasons. Number one, I do like how the legs manage to hide the rear wheels. That's something they don't do very often. I think the proportions and I think the overall look are really, really good. I'm happy that so little kibble was involved in actually, like, the result of this robot mode. A little bit on his arms, a little bit on his back. Nothing terrible, nothing game-changing, nothing deal-breaking. And of course, yeah, like I like the fact that he comes with modular weapons. I like the fact that, you know, his axe also has a shield mode. They have a combined mode. I think something that people don't realize that really is to the benefit of this toy and helps it do a lot of cool things that you normally can't at Voyager class with Optimus. It doesn't have a matrix compartment. It has one sculpted in, but it doesn't have like the full matrix with the removable piece that every Prime has now. I think that actually helps it actually avoid a lot of it and gives it some more room in its engineering to just be a dead solid Optimus Prime. We're a little bit tired of molds like this, but let's be honest, there's a reason why they were done so often. They are very, very good toys. And I can remember when I got this in hand for the first time, I loved it, and I loved what it was doing. So I'm going to give it a nod. I think maybe the Cybertronian element of the vehicle mode could have been pushed a little bit harder, but beyond that, I do think this is a really, really good Optimus Prime that definitely deserves to be mentioned. Believe it or not, I have another Studio Series toy for you, and this one took me so much by surprise when it came out. Genuinely could not believe how much I enjoyed this figure. We need to talk about the Age of Extinction Leader Class Grimlock. My God, this toy. So, first off, screen accurate deco. It's all gunmetal. They didn't start doing like the bronze or like the Power Ranger colors that they were doing on all the Dinobots for that toy line. It just looks screen accurate, and it makes him look incredibly menacing. No cheating in the robot mode. You know, you've got like the actual T-Rex head forming the shoulder pauldrons. They look incredible. What's really impressive about this toy are two aspects. Number one, it's gigantic. Like, for a $55 toy, especially what we get for a $55 toy today, this thing was absolutely huge and barely fit in the box. Second to that is the deco. There is a patina deco across him with like little hits of teal here and there to just give it this look of really aged metal. And it is the kind of work you would expect on a custom, not a mass-produced piece. Like, it's stunning. And like a photograph does not do it justice. Like, you really do have to see one in person to really see just like how good the paint scheme on this thing came out. Incredibly impressive figure. Aside from the fact it's just a fun figure to mess around with. It's just a really solid Grimlock toy on top of all of that. Yeah, what else could you want? Screen accurate, colors are accurate, great size, great transformation, just really impressive stuff. Really impressive stuff. Potentially my favorite Studio Series figure until we start getting into the 86 run. I'm going to leave it at that because, yeah, I could gush on this thing for a long time, and we still have more to go. We did have Masterpiece releases this year, but it was hard for me to really pin down which ones were, like, bang for your buck good enough to be on this list. And eventually I had to settle for, like, what are they doing that is different from Masterpiece that justifies this and actually puts them a little bit higher on the list. And that's why Barricade ends up here. For starters, yes, we can talk accuracy. Like, it looks how I envisioned Barricade. Like, that is just like a spot-on depiction of the character. I love that he comes with a giant buzzsaw weapon. That's menacing. I love that. And then, yeah, the vehicle mode's spot on. Like, you know, that's just straight up the exact vehicle. Really, really, really well done by Takara. Very, very well engineered. Very, very nice piece. What pushes this a little bit farther, and what makes it more impressive to me, is the fact that there's actually a high amount of diecast content on this toy, and I'm not entirely sure why, because diecast was not a standard thing on Masterpiece at this point, except in little small bits here and there. But this one actually does have a decent amount. It's in his legs, it's in his chest, like it's surprising how much diecast actually went into a toy at a time when diecast was being used very sparingly. And I think to put that in as something, as like a nod to collectors who still like metal in their toys, and still come up with something that is highly articulated, highly detailed, very well painted, and just like spot on what you would want out of a Barricade. I think all of that put together just makes this an incredibly impressive package overall. He could have used a Frenzy. I'm still waiting for like some representation of Frenzy in any of these Masterpiece movie toys. Probably not happening at this rate, but I will give credit. It's a very, very well done figure. Very well done figure. And the fact that it makes it sure that it's a well done and well made figure, great to play with diecast, okay, fine. You get to be top 5. Like I keep repeating on this list though, you don't have to be Masterpiece level to just be a really good toy and earn a really high spot on this list. Sometimes you just have to be really good at what you're doing. And that brings us to a toy I never thought we would get a modern version of. Punch and Counter Punch. This is always a tricky one because 2 robot modes in the same toy has been done, what, twice technically in Transformers? Maybe 3 times if you include Masterpiece Rodimus, and I barely count that. And to get it done this well is incredibly impressive. He's got different hands for both modes. He's got different kibble arrangements, different heads. He's got everything you could want. Like, it's an exceptionally well done take on Punch Counter Punch. It's just, it looks so good in both robot modes, and then you get a really nice, clean vehicle out of it, too. Keep that in mind. Like, there's really not a lot of kibble accomplishing this. There's not a lot of paneling done. It's just really clever part usage and really clever usage of the, the engineering. You know, things like double joint, you know, like elbows and knees that swing both ways, for instance. This is very well done. This is exceptionally well done. And it's one of those where I'm like, I'm not sure we need another one. This feels definitive. This feels like spot on what this toy should always be. The only oddity to it is that it still comes with one of the Power of the Primes, like Prime armor gimmick things that are basically an excuse to have a fist for the combine mode. He doesn't form a combiner arm. He's just himself. So it's a weird little inclusion, but at least it's more accessory. And it's more for this toy to play with, because it's already got a ton of play value for a deluxe. Really brilliant job. Really, really good toy. You're going to accuse me of bias for this one if you've known this channel long enough, and I will admit maybe a little bit snuck in, but again, we know on these lists I reward extremely good engineering levels that Takara manages to accomplish from time to time. And yeah, for 2018, I don't think engineering gets more impressive than Masterpiece Dinobot. It already does a lot. Okay, let's put that aside. He comes with the weapons you want him to have. He comes with his eye lasers. He comes with alternate faces. He comes with the golden disc. And then there's everything else you got about him. Great articulation in both modes, including a very articulate and playable dinosaur mode. Now, the Raptor does have some gaps in it. We talked about this when Cheetor came up. You're not going to be able to avoid that with a lot of Beast Wars Masterpiece, because frankly, those designs are meant to be impossible. And that's why this toy ends up so high on the list. Yes, he has a big backpack to hold all of the panels it takes in order to pull this off. But the fact that it pulls it off at all is nothing short of an engineering marvel. This character, above all others, cheated for his transformation in the Beast Wars cartoon. And yet here we have this as screen accurate as you can get representation of both of his modes, which is so important with Beast Wars toys because they were in those modes for so long. It's part of their character. To see that here and to have all the tricks that this toy is capable of included, alongside just like really good accuracy and articulation all the way around. This is incredibly impressive. You know, more than once I've thought about selling off my Masterpiece toys, just because I feel like Generations scratches the itch that I need with a lot of them. Never this one. This one stays. This is a hallmark of engineering, and frankly, the best representation of one of the best Transformer characters we've ever had. Absolutely deserves to be very high on the list. But someone has to top this list, and once again, I'm going to go with one where people are a little bit combative about it, and I think people are being unfair. So I'm going to put him as high on the list as I possibly can. We need to talk about Power of the Prime's Predaking, the Titan of the year, and once again, it is a combiner, because Titans like this work best as all-in-one box sets, so you avoid like too many similar characters all at once. Granted, Constructicons that are coming out for Studio Series as of this video are going to defy that, but I think they can get away with that at this point. Not so much in 2018. So what we got was a box set of the Predacons that turned into a really, really good-looking Predaking. Yeah, he might be a little bit thin in the waist. He might be a little bit anemic looking in some angles. But I think what they did was learn from Devastator's mistakes and create a much more interesting and effective method of combining 5 bots into one. Keep in mind, Predaking has a distinct disadvantage because he has to be the same size in all 5 of his individual robot modes. And that means Razor Claw, the torso piece, has to somehow be the same size as all the characters combining to him. Relocating a lot of the mass to the legs does provide big backpacks for them, unfortunately, but I don't think it hampers them terribly. I think they still pull off both of their modes fine. And I think the overall sacrifice they make to do that is more than compensated for with how good Predaking comes out as just a big playable action figure. Yes, you could argue proportions. Yes, you could argue the combiner junk left over in the individual robot modes. You're going to make sacrifices to make a piece like this, and I think his are genuinely worth it. The overall toy looks and plays really, really great. And I absolutely love this toy. Absolutely do. So yeah, for me, 2018's best toy is Titan Class Predaking. You are free to fight me on that in the comments section, as I'm sure someone does. Someone always will. This is, admittedly, a very divisive year. If you are a Studio Series, basically a movie Transformer fan in general, you're probably going to put a lot more on here than I did. Yeah, because I left off the Studio Series Optimuses and Megatrons. But for me, I think this is about as fair of a list as I can get with my opinion. You're free to share yours in the comments below. And as always, I will see you next time.